So winter weather's here, and your perennial food plants might need a little bit of extra help to survive. We're going to talk about the hows and whys of mulching so everything makes it until spring. In a normal winter, what happens is the temperature gradually gets colder and colder. The days get shorter and shorter as we approach the winter solstice, and the ground starts to freeze. So all of these things are signals for the plant to go into a dormant state. Dormancy is what protects perennial food plants over the winter. When they're dormant, they have almost no activity going on. The water movement sort of slows to a crawl. There's not really any photosynthesis happening anymore. They're just basically put into a state where they're waiting for spring, and then they can survive that way. In an ideal year, that dormancy occurs and then it stays dormant all the way through the year. There's a nice thick layer of snow on the ground that keeps the ground frozen. The temperature gets cold and it stays consistently cold for months at a time. And then in the spring, gradually, as the days are longer, temperature starts to increase, water starts moving in the soil, all these things happen, and then they come out of dormancy and start growing, and it's magical springtime. We haven't seen a normal winter in a long time. The last few years especially have been super erratic. We don't really have snow cover consistently anymore. We don't have that insulating layer anymore. We get erratic temperature swings. So we'll get warm spells where the temperature gets above zero, even in January. Then it'll plummet way down to, minus 25, which is really the maximum of unseasonably cold here. We get a lot more rain and ice events than we used to instead of those snowstorms. These are things that are changing with the climate. As gardeners, we're going to have to really pay attention to them and figure out ways to help protect our garden as the climate changes and as it puts stress on these plants. So damage to perennial plants will happen when they get too cold, when they're not in a dormant state. In a dormant state, they can withstand temperatures that are pretty chilly, depends on the plant again, but if it's a plant that's native to this area, it should be able to handle the seasonal cools that we have. If you're growing something from outside of our area, from a different zone, might be a little bit different. Should be aware of that when you're planting it. What will happen in these erratic winters that we've been having and will continue to have is that, a warm fall and then a quick drop in temperature, the plant's not dormant yet, and then damage occurs. So how do we make sure that these plants can survive over the winter? Mulching is the most important thing that we can do. Some materials you can use for mulching include straw, like I use here. That's one of my favorites. You don't want to use hay. Hay has too many weed seeds in it and it will create a problem later on. If you live near the ocean, something like salt hay or eelgrass or other kinds of seaweed, you might want to use leaves, although beware, they do tend to become sort of matted and thick. If you use leaves like around here, oak leaves, they'll stay crunchy and not get as matted. What I did this year is bought some straw bales. Straw is great because it has hollow stems, so that provides a nice insulating layer. The goal is to create a thick layer of mulch on the ground to make it loose and bountiful and to cover all of the plants on the ground. You can see I'm doing this here with some rhubarb plants and some high bush blueberries. With that rhubarb, I'm just covering it all up. You can't see it underneath there. It's a herbaceous perennial, so all the leaves have died completely back to the ground. And then the blueberries probably 5 or 6 years old, but we've moved them twice, and they really only showed a good amount of growth this last year. So I want to make sure they go into next year with the ability to grow even more. These have woody stems that persist above the ground, and this is great for mulching actually, because you can really sort of stuff the mulch in and around the stems, and it gives the mulch something to sort of hold on to and keep it from blowing away. Mulching a whole area is better than just concentrating on the stems, because what you're doing is you're creating basically like an air pocket around the plants that's going to insulate them against big swings in temperature. Really, this blanket of mulch is maybe only going to regulate the temperature of the ground for an hour or so. Maybe it's only going to change the degree temperatures by 1 or 2 degrees, but that might be enough to keep the plant from being damaged and dying. So the goal is to basically put like a great big kind of feather duvet blanket over the entire area that you want to mulch. So good luck to you and your perennial plants over the winter. Winter is an excellent time of sort of rest and reflection, and I can't wait until the spring when everything starts to grow again.